Hello and welcome to Tuesday training for practitioners. Y'all are coming in. I'm so excited to be here on another fabulous Tuesday. It feels like it's a Monday, I'm not going to lie, after our holiday here in the US, but I'm glad that you're all here. Hey, Cheryl, it's nice to see you. Hello, hello.
Hey,
No,
hello.
hi. Hi, Gary. Hi, Cheryl. And we have we have a couple more people in. Jetty and Kathy. Oh, some new names. I'm so excited. Great. We get to play with some fun people today. Awesome. Welcome while you're coming in. I'm happy to see you. Please feel free if you're here for the first time to come on camera. I promise you it's a lovely group of people. We all really like to play well together. We play nice together. So you can feel free to come on camera and play. We're going to talk some shoulders today, which I'm excited about. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I am your host today and every Tuesday. I'm Gina Schatz, the developer of the Schatz method, which is a lovely way to create some lasting results for your clients working pain-free. It's a pretty cool method. It's trademarked. It's real. We license you. And we have exciting news about that method today. If I can say, we're celebrating Cheryl. Cheryl's going to come play with us for the year. Yay! I'm so happy to finally publicly tell everybody, Cheryl. So, yeah, we're excited. Cheryl's coming into our 2024 class, which starts just in a few weeks now. July 1st is our start date every year. And it is a year-long program. So it goes by fast. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It goes by fast. We do hard driving towards that finish line, but it's not hard. It's just that we drive towards that finish line for a whole year, which makes it feel like it's going fast. Cheryl's like, you didn't tell me this before, Gina. I'm listening in carefully. No, you know what it's going to be. You know what it's going to be. So yeah, we have an annual enrollment, which is we're actively in enrollment right now. So we're going to sponsor our today's Tuesday training with a little mastery program FYI. We do have a yearly program, starts July 1st. We run for a whole year. Not run because it's like running from a bear, but like the program runs for a year. And in that year, I teach you all the touchstones of the method. Again, it's a trademark method. You are licensed in the method at the end of that year-long track, which is exciting. It is only once a year. I've had a couple people ask me, can I start later? It's only once a year, my guys, my loves, because we all start together and we finish together. So the power of learning together in community, we've talked about here a lot on Tuesday training, that we have research that shows us that we expand our learning and expand our potential when we're learning in community. And so that's one of the benefits of having this community working together in this year-long track. What do you get at the end of that? Well, by the end, you learn not only the whole method, but you also learn with that method how to remedy folks' pain, compensation patterns, and referral patterns at the source rather than treating symptoms. And you also learn how to prevent them, which is also another fabulous way to move through the world. So your clients can come to you with whatever else they really wanted to do instead of this pain problem that was persistent. So that's what we do in short. So obviously a little bit more concentrated than that, or we wouldn't need a year to go over it. But that's essentially what we're up to for the year. And that's what I have to share with you about Tuesday training. I do know that Lori wanted to be here, Cheryl, to celebrate you because you were in conversation with her as you were making your decisions. And she's working on a new Schatz method client right now as we speak. So how ironic that the method's working and she's otherwise busy, but she wanted me to send you her best. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from her directly too. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say, Cheryl? Well, I've just totally outed you in live TV for the whole world to know.
I'm excited. I'm very excited to get started. I feel like I'm hungry for it, so I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Yes, I feel like we're excited to have you too, and I can feel your excitement. And I think that's true. Like when you're ready, right? I think
Mhm.
when they're ready, they usually know that. So I can feel
Yeah.
your readiness, and I'm also ready to pour into you. So we're going to make that happen.
Okay. Great.
Awesome. Yes. And your vision is strong, which I also love. I think we came up to that. If I'm not mistaken, we came up with your vision here in Tuesday training.
Yeah, it happened pretty quickly. It kind of was a quick turnaround. I don't, it was kind of interesting how that happened. Like it all of a sudden was like, oh yeah. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, yeah. So it's
Good.
good. Yeah.
Okay, well, fantastic. We're going to make that vision come to life in less than the year's time. That's the
Yeah.
other thing I want to share. I think I shared this with you, Cheryl. You start using the method within a couple months. You don't have the whole method until month 11, but you're already starting to shift the way you work. So we'll see we'll see the method and your vision come to unity way before a year from now. So I'm excited to watch that transition and that progress with you.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Yeah. So, and here we are today for Tuesday training. Our topic is shoulders, specifically a specific shoulder question. Came in again from Rebecca. Hello, Rebecca. Rebecca is in Australia. So in the land of Oz, it's the middle of the night. So that is unfortunately not convenient for her to show up live every week, but she is communicating with me over email and watching the replays. And we have another question from her. She's asking super smart, thoughtful questions about movement and mechanics. And I was told this, and what about that? And we talked about the knee question that came up in conversation with Rebecca last week. And was it last week or the week before? And now I'm losing track of time, guys. Let's talk about, thank God for my calendar, so I know what day of the week it is. But this is another question from Rebecca, and it's about shoulder action. Although her question wasn't phrased as shoulder action specifically, but it ends up being a shoulder question. So let me tell you what I mean by that. You've heard me say this before, and I will say it again and again and again and again until it gets to be simple for all of us. When we're navigating for movement practitioners, when we're navigating what is a movement supposed to look like, and what do I do if how it looks doesn't feel good, we're actually navigating the same thing as manual practitioners are navigating with the same physical activity. Because how it doesn't feel good is where we're all meeting in the middle. How does this not feel good? And it's always this. If we move the body the way it's designed, we got to know the design, and we move the body in alignment, we got to know how it's aligned, then there is no pain. So if you're in the movement end of someone's experience, a client's experience, and they're not moving pain-free, or you're not sure how it's supposed to look, alignment, to get them to move pain-free, it's the same conversation, it's the same training as manual practitioners get when their client comes to them having moved not pain-free, and now they're still not pain-free, and they want the manual practitioner to take care of it for them. It's the same body of information. It's the same way that I approach the body through the Schatz method. I'm not teaching you to be a yoga teacher or a personal trainer or a massage therapist. You already come that way. But there's something about the anatomy and the functional anatomy that we all get to know so that our clients can be with you as a yoga teacher, personal trainer, movement provider, and be with you on the table receiving some really good, productive manual work, which doesn't have to be because they're in pain and they need you to get them out of pain. Believe it or not, like there's a whole lot to do for someone's body while they're on your treatment table as a manual practitioner that doesn't have to be remedying pain. There's other things you could be doing manually, just like they could be moving differently instead of navigating the pain while they're trying to move. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you believe that? Kind of? I would love for you to be on board with me on that. Where's I'm not yet clear. Where does it sound to you like I might have not made clarity or blurred it together?
Oh, I get it.
You do get it, Cheryl?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, that we kind of meet in the middle where there's pain. It's either, you know, if you're a movement practitioner, at least this is how I understand it. If you're a movement practitioner and you understand somebody is in pain, then you can change the movement to try to help them out of that pain. Or if you're a manual practitioner, like you said, then they're coming to you to try to help you do the same thing. I mean, we're kind of meeting in the middle where the pain is.
Right.
Yeah. Is that correct?
It is correct. The only place that I would offer clarity, because I've had this come back in questions, is, well, but if somebody's in pain and I'm a movement practitioner, I just do something different so they don't feel that pain. Not exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's because of how they're moving or not moving that's causing the pain.
Or limitation.
Or
of
limitation.
Their movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is case by case. Some people are like, well, but what if someone's in a cast? Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like, I'm in a yoga class, or I'm with my personal trainer, or I just came from a yoga class and now my back hurts, or I just came from gardening and now my low back hurts and I need my massage therapist appointment, right? So it's that type of, I don't have, broken bones, nothing's casted, or there's no slings on my body, although we do navigate that in our method. In this conversation, I'm just talking about where manual and movement practitioners meet in the middle when it comes to pain, that we all get to know the same information, because that can also remedy the pain. Gary, did that make clarity for you? Yeah, for sure, for sure. I can't tell if you're still digesting that.
Um, I guess I'm jumping ahead is how do we get there?
How do we,
Start with the basics. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
how do we get to where's there? What do you mean by that?
So
Say more.
The pain-free movement,
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Okay, that we're going to talk about some pain-free movement today. How's that?
Mhm.
Good. Okay, so maybe we'll get there while you jumped ahead, which I love. I do that too, but I don't want to be in this conversation right now. I want to be in the solution part of it. Noted. Here we go. Here we go. Awesome. Welcome, Miranda. I'm glad you're here. Okay. Hi. So the question came in about a particular body posture, a movement. And as I mentioned, and I'm going to show you that image here in a second, but I want to land some ideas here. As I mentioned, if you're not a movement practitioner, that is okay. You still get to know how the body moves to know what caused the pain. Either how they moved or how they didn't move is what caused the pain. Okay, so you don't need to be yoga teachers to have this information. All you need is to have anatomy. What's the joint action that's happening? Okay, so there's a particular yoga pose, could be a gardening pose, could be a Tai Chi pose, could be a workout with a personal trainer in the gym pose. The name of it doesn't matter. I promise you it doesn't matter. And I'm emphasizing this here specifically, not only for our conversation today, but it still trips up some practitioners even when they're in our mastery program. Oh, well, I'm not a yoga teacher. Maybe that's why I can't figure things out. Not true. Oh, I'm not a massage therapist. That's why I can't fix it. Not true. I promise you it's not true. Okay. What is true is we get to know the anatomy, how it's supposed to move, and what to do about it if it's not moving that way. That's it. And it doesn't mean you have to be a movement practitioner to do that. You could be doing the movement for somebody on the table, still have to use the same muscles, right? Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, yes, it looks like a yoga pose in the picture. Do not panic or take yourself out of the conversation, because that would be holding yourself short. And you guys are all very qualified here. You show up every week. And can I just acknowledge that, by the way? This Tuesday training is like its own pod, which I really love. So for those of you who are joining us, what's happening? I don't know if you guys heard that. Did you guys hear two of me? Yeah, you can only handle one of me. It's plenty. I don't know why it does that when YouTube decides to play it back for me. Anyway, for Len and Kathy, who are here, and I know there was somebody else that was here too off camera, you're welcome to be here off camera. Sometimes you can't be on camera, you're driving, or you're listening only on audio and you're working with a client or something. That's fine. But feel free to come and join us in real life, be on camera, come off mute if you want to, because truly Tuesdays you guys have created your own pod here, which I love. And most of you show up every single week, which is awesome. Both manual and movement providers. So I just want to hat tip to all of you for being so consistent and showing up for more training each week. Delights me. And so today, again, we're going to use a yoga pose as the visual aid. And if you are not a yoga teacher, which I don't think anybody here actually is a yoga teacher who's showing up here today, even in our existing pod, don't panic, because that's not what it's about. It's not a yoga pose. It's movement. Okay, it's functional movement. How does this body part function, and what would you recommend? The good news about approaching it like this is your client can come to you, you're a massage therapist, let's say. They can come to you with a basketball injury. They could come to you with a yoga discrepancy. They could come to you with gardening aches and pains, and you're like, I got it. because I'm not a movement practitioner, but I know how the body moves. And you could be a movement practitioner and not have to be a movement practitioner of all movement types because you know movement. You just happen to focus on one. Okay. So as you're looking at any particular pose or a name of anything, don't worry about, I'm not a Tai Chi practitioner. Just what's the body doing? What's the anatomy? How is it moving? Okay. So I really want to emphasize that. I'm going to show you the picture here in a minute, and then I'm going to let you know the question that we're approaching for Rebecca. And I'm going to highlight the question a little bit and elaborate on it. One thing I realize is that sometimes we ask questions on a pose instead of looking at just the anatomy, which would make it super simple for all of us. So I'm emphasizing that for a reason, because when you see this pose, if you haven't seen it before, your eyes might go, whoa, what's going on there? So let me show you the picture and you tell me what you see, and then we'll talk it out. Okay. All right. So you guys see a slide up on the screen, and do you see that? And you see two side-by-side images, one with a collage and one with a different. Okay, great. So tell me what you see here just in general. Just tell me what you see. We're just going to hone our visual assessment and connecting it to our body knowledge. What do you guys see?
Lat stretch. I mean, I kind of feel like it's a lengthening of the lats on the one side of the body, so side body stretch.
Okay, great. Which side, Cheryl? The one facing the sky or the one facing the floor?
Facing the sky.
Okay, great. What else do you see?
Shoulder stabilization on the bottom arm, holding in that high plank position with the arm.
Okay, great. What
else? I'm looking at the single picture.
Perfect. Yep, it's all good. What else? And this is for everybody. What do you guys see?
Full range of motion on the lower 4, 5, and 6. She's really moving her arm. It looks like a full range of motion, whereas the picture on the right is in a static stretch. If you can call it a static stretch, I don't know. It's
okay,
going in one dimension.
Okay, great. And which arm are you talking about, Gary? The one that's closest to the sky or the one closest to the floor?
Well, that whole movement. I'm talking about the model in pink.
Yeah.
In 4, 5, and 6, she starts out and extends the arm up and then extends the arm over. So,
which one? The arm on the floor or the one arm in the sky?
The arm in the sky. The arm on the floor is stationary.
Okay. The one on the bottom is stationary.
Right.
Is that what you said? Okay. Awesome. Anything else you see? Gary? Oh.
Yes. Her head is in one position. It's one static, probably an extension of the straight spine. But I can't really tell that. But the head's in a very specific position, not down and not up. It's very, I don't know, straight.
Okay, great. Anything else?
She's also getting a hip flexor stretch, so as in 2 and 3, with the upper leg, flexion of the other, both in one.
Great.
What else? That looks like it's a movement. That's a continuous flow movement.
Correct.
Right, from 1 to 6.
Right. Correct. Anything else?
And is the last one, that's a little different because her legs are extended.
In which one?
In the single picture.
In the one in green.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you guys see? It's good visual assessment to just be like, because to your point, this is a fluid movement, like movement usually is. And we want to be able to like Kodak moment each section and see like what actually is happening. What am I seeing being done here from joint action? So this is great. You guys are doing great. What else do you see? Anything else?
Ankle dorsiflexion in
Okay.
1, 2, 3, on 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Calf stretch.
Anything else?
Torso twist
Torso twist.
and lateral flexion on the right.
Which torso twist,
Green.
Rhonda? In green. So there's a twist. You see a twist in her torso?
I do.
Okay. Which part of her torso?
Her hips are not in the same plane as her breasts, as
Okay.
her chest.
Right.
And there's a shortening on the right side of the trunk of the torso.
Okay. Do you happen to know what joint action that is?
Lateral flexion
Of
and rotation
of
the torso,
Yep. Great. Or spine.
lumbars, whatever.
Yeah, spine. Yeah. It's always good to thanks for letting me hot seat you there for a mini quiz you. It's always good to, when you see something, it's not like when you see something, say something, but kind of when you see something in the body, say the joint action that you see. It's a great practice to get into, because as soon as you identify joint action, then you're onto muscles that do that joint action, and then you're onto doing something about those muscles. So that's what you guys just witnessed me walk Rhonda through. Great. You see something, what's it called? And then of what, meaning of what joint? So we can say lateral flexion to a couple places in the body. So you really want to practice saying the body part, the joint, and what action you're seeing there for the reasons I already mentioned. Okay, awesome. Anything else you guys are seeing?
Plantar flexion of the right. Oops, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Plantar flexion of the right foot. Ankle.
In which image?
In the green.
Okay. Oh, the foot that's closest to us?
Yes.
Okay. Great. What else?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Overhead shoulder extension. Is that what that would be?
Overhead shoulder extension.
Like she's extending over her head because they're like if she was standing, her arms would be overhead. So
yeah.
Shoulder.
Which image are you pointing that? Are you pointing that out?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, great. What's that joint action?
Shoulder extension.
It's actually shoulder flexion. And this is common for us because we, just as you said, Cheryl, just as you said, extend your arms up overhead. We often say that when we're instructing movement, but the joint action is actually flexion of the shoulder. So that one can often be a tongue tire. What's that, Cheryl?
Because it's closer to the center line?
Not because it's closer to the center line, but if you look at joint actions while you're learning them, and you are going to learn them all, my friend Cheryl, as you're looking at joint actions, it's really about degrees. And so you're mentioning closer to the midline, but actually this degree. Yeah, this one's extension. So here's Murph with extension. Normally I'd have a piece of blue tape on him here so that you could see his humerus. So this is extension. This is neutral. There's no action happening at the shoulder joint. And as soon as you take your arm forward, this angle here changes. It's shorter from the axis. If you run the line all the way up, it gets shorter. This is now in geometry world, right?
Yeah.
Like 180 degrees. Yeah. So this would be flexion. And from that same middle point, this would be extension. Or excuse me, hyperextension. So flexion, extension is neutral, hyperextension is behind. Okay. There's that running line down the middle of his axis. Okay, great. So common when we take our arms overhead, reach our hands up to the sky, extend, reach, and then we forget that joint action is actually flexion, which then changes. If this is called extension and this is called hyperextension and this is called flexion, but I just said extend your arms. Oh shit, what muscle does that? So it can get us tongue-tied around what muscles do the action, and then we don't know what we're treating. So just good to know the joint actions and where we might use street language that isn't necessarily joint action identity. And that's a common one at the shoulders. So awesome for that. Anything else you guys see?
Cervical rotation of the head in the green
Okay.
dressed lady.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Lateral rotation. Great. Anything else you see? You guys are doing great being hot seated, by the way. Very courageous. Any other joint actions?
In number 3,
Mm-hmm.
hip extension. So the glute would be activated.
There you
because
go.
it's behind the midline. It's extended behind.
Yep, exactly. So for example, if we're working with someone's hip action, whether we're the manual practitioner or the movement practitioner, if they lift their leg like that and the glute max doesn't engage, because we know that's the main muscle that does extension of the hip and hyperextension of the hip, then what's doing the job? Those are the people that come to you with low back pain because somebody else did the job other than glute max. So that right there, that is one example of why it's important to know joint action. And it's true whether you're a manual or a movement practitioner. If I have somebody coming to me as a manual practitioner with back pain, I can massage their back all day, but it's not coming from there. It's coming from their absence of moving their hips with the right muscle so that the back muscles click in to do a job they're not supposed to do. And if you're a movement practitioner, it's the same. You don't want them to just lift their leg so that the leg looks lifted. You want them to lift their leg the way they're designed to lift their leg so that they are using glute max to do this action and not using something else that's going to send them to a manual practitioner and out of your class for a couple of weeks while their back heals. So that right there is a prime example of why knowing joint action for both manual and movement providers is so helpful, right? Because then we can figure out what's going awry so that the client can stay with us and not need to leave. Okay, so there's a whole lot going on here. I'm so glad that you guys were calling out joint action. Now, let me ask you this. Yes, there's a whole lot going on here. What do you think is the main request of the body here in this particular pose? So look at, let's say, for example, number 6 and the gallon green. What do you think the body's being asked to do the most? The most. What's the body being asked to do?
Hyperflex
Hyperflex what?
from the shoulder and also from the hip and quad area. I'm not sure about the knee, but everything is extending out.
Okay, so when you say hyperflex, Gary, we don't have a joint action called hyperflex. So tell me what you mean by that. I love that you jumped in and tell me what you mean by hyperflexed.
Well, if you look at the spinal area, if we're not in the normal curves of the spine here.
Mm-hmm.
So the front, the anterior part of the body is over. It's not. This is not the proper term, but it's arching over.
Okay.
So beyond that, I'm not sure.
Okay. So go ahead, Cheryl.
Would it be spinal extension? And it seems to me.
Okay.
Like
so
with that, in number 6, it would be spinal extension.
Okay. So spine extension, that would be the joint action. Yep. And tiny detail here, but it matters. You get to be really clear for yourselves on what's the difference between neutral, like the 4 curves balanced. What do you call that? And then what do you call the opposites, front and back? So in my world, I call standing neutral with 4 balanced curves. I call that extension. Everything's extension. So from Yep. So from behind, so this would be neutral. And sometimes I interchange it as well. So just to have you really be thinking, so I don't confuse you, but confuse you and make you think. So this standing axial skeleton, everything's in neutral. Shoulders in neutral, hips in neutral, all four curves are in neutral or extended. So then if I go to do a back bend, which I can't get Murph to do because he's bolted, but if I go to do a back bend, that's hyperextended.
Okay.
And if I go to do, basically forward slouching, right? That is spine flexion. Okay, so extension, flexion, extension, hyperextension. Or if this is neutral and you say that's no joint action, so I'm not going to call it extension, which you could argue that fairly, and I'd be like, yep, I get it. Then this is extension. Or excuse me, this is neutral, this is nothing. Then this would be extension, and this would be flexion. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just get to figure out what is your neutral. What do you call that?
Okay.
And then go from there. So you always have a neutral starting point, and then you can see a joint action happening from where there was no joint action happening. So call your starting point something consistent so that joint action is either extension or hyperextension. Okay. You can get creative with it after you know them for sure. But for learning purposes, I recommend getting super clear at first and being consistent with it until you're clear what you're seeing and what you're saying matches so that you can then identify what muscle is doing that job. So let's say, for example, we're going to call out the spine here. Which side of the spine, the anterior side or the posterior side, which side of the spine is doing the muscle action?
Posterior.
Brenda's a yes for that. Go ahead, Gary. What?
Posterior?
Posterior side?
Yeah.
And Rhonda nodded, so she's posterior. Cheryl, what do you think?
I would say I agree.
Okay, I heard a question mark there, and that's okay. Yep. And so the action is contraction, and the action, again, is either extension or hyperextension of the spine. That's the action. So it's the side of the joint that's doing the action that is contracting. Action is contraction. Where would you feel it though? If you were in this position, either with the gal in green or definitely number 6, where would you feel the most sensation though, relative to your spine? On the front or on the back?
Front.
The front. Yeah. The sensation is in the stretch or in the lengthened side. The action is in the contraction on the shortening side. So for those of you who are in the lever system masterclass, that's making sense to you. And you're like, oh yeah, right. So we need to know that as the bodywork specialist, so that when our clients are telling us where they're feeling it, we don't get distracted. What should be doing the job? And is it doing the job? And if the answer,
if
go ahead,
a
Gary.
person was having lower back pain and their QLs are tightening up and they're having problems there or in the spinalis, maybe they're feeling it there more than they're feeling it in the anterior part of the body.
And should you feel it in the action side? Based on?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're bringing to the table, I guess.
No. So based on our limerick, the action is contraction and the sensation is stretch. So if I have somebody in a position like this where I know that the posterior side of their spine muscles, we don't even need to name them all right now, but if the posterior side of their spine is the side that's contracting, they shouldn't feel it there. They would largely feel it in the lengthening side. If they are feeling it in the side that's contracting, we have a problem. And now we know, pause, what's supposed to be happening, who's supposed to be doing the job, why isn't he doing the job?
Okay, got it.
Yep. Okay, so that's exactly how we work out functional mechanics. That's how I roll it out. Okay, so we got that answer on the spine. And now my question still is, what is the body being asked to do right now in this position the most? Do you guys still think it's spine? The most.
The stabilizing arm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stabilizing arm. Yep. Because without that, we can't do the back bend. So now the question is the arm stabilizing?
Shoulder.
Yeah. Because it's still action at a joint. Yep. And so it's awesome, Rhonda. And we're fine tuning here. That's our joy. We're zoning in, right? So we no longer at this point even have to know the name of this yoga pose. The fact that it's called Wild Thing is irrelevant because now we're on to joint action and the muscles that do it and what the body's really being asked to do. And notice that we started our conversation today with there's like 100 things happening. And what we just did, what I just walked us through is, and what do I get to focus on if I'm working on pain management and pain prevention? The order of things matters. What am I being asked to do the most? Are there 60 other things happening? Yeah. But what am I being asked to do the most? That's where I focus. And then what part of the body is doing the contracting? Because I don't want to feel it there. I wouldn't. And if you just go to those two steps in that order, the other 60 things that you see happening can come later. Do you need to focus on the position of her head? Sure. First, no. Second, no. Third, no. Right? Like if I'm working on managing pain, moving the body the way it's designed to move, what is my body being asked to do by joint action first? And where am I feeling it second? Period. And then you do the same formula through all the joints. Same formula through all the joints. First, we're on shoulder, then we're on spine, then we're on. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah. Okay. This feels like a mini masterclass. Maybe it's because we just came off of a masterclass last week and I'm still in masterclass mode. Okay, great. So first things first, stabilizing shoulder. Do we all agree?
Yeah.
Stabilizing shoulder. Okay, great. So who does that job? Who meaning muscles? Muscles always have personalities in my book. So who does shoulder stabilizing? Definitely feels like a hot seat moment. You're like, shit, why is she calling me out on muscles right now? I know, I get it.
We went through this a while ago.
Yeah, that's right. We had 2 Tuesday trainings on this one. Exactly. So that's cool. I'm glad you remember that. That's good.
Is it
get to
the
review things until we-
supraspinatus? I want to say it's the supraspinatus.
Okay. Anybody else?
I mean, I have my notes in front of me from the shoulder that we.
Okay, cool. Cool. Anybody else want to gander a guess?
Serratus anterior, mid fibers.
Yes, serratus.
Serratus anterior.
Yeah.
Gary, you're in serratus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Final answers?
Serratus. Okay.
Stabilizes the shoulder joint. I love that you guys are being willing to hot seat right now. Super courageous of you. I'm acknowledging you for that.
Teres major and minor.
Okay. Any other guesses? Let's show you Murph. Just in case of the... Yeah.
Oh wait, infraspinatus and teres minor.
Okay.
Must be in alignment to have stabilization. That's one of my notes.
Yeah. Okay. So here we are at the glenohumeral joint, right? The glenoid fossa, which is half scapula, half humerus, right? We're definitely there. And this guy is a ball and socket joint. This guy's a ball and socket joint. So we need to create stability in a ball and socket joint, not too different from like a catcher's mitt. If any of you guys have littles at home who play softball or baseball, you know, the mitt and the ball is in the mitt and it's kind of held in that position. They usually store them like that after practice. We want to create that. That's stable. And this particular design is pretty shallow, right? The scapula, it's almost like a perpendicular to the earth ball and socket joint, just sort of hanging out there. So we did talk about that when we went through rotator cuff, that the rotator cuff is often looked at, especially in the physical therapy lens, as rotation. It's even in the name of it, rotates the cuff. Let me see if I can get Murph to stand. It rotates the cuff, rotates in the cuff, rotator cuff, right? And when it's not doing rotation, like when we're standing, it still has to stabilize by holding this humerus onto the torso.
Mm.
It's a big deal. We miss it a lot, again, in the name of the area of the body, and in physical therapy, they usually focus on the rotation, which is phasic action. But rotator cuff has a huge job in stabilizing this joint. Huge job in stabilizing this joint. And that's without movement. That's without movement. So have a look at the girl in the green. Is there joint action happening in the shoulder? Is there joint action happening here in the glenohumeral joint?
Mhm.
Yeah, which ones? Which joint action?
Abduction.
Abduction of the shoulder. What else?
Flexion.
What else?
Stabilization.
Yeah, stabilization. One more phasic action. One more phasic action.
It's like, is it, I want to say, external rotation?
Yes. Yes. Look at where her hand is.
Yeah.
And look at where her chest is relative to her humerus, right? There's this thing going on, especially if you look over at number 6, but her glenohumeral joint is hidden, but you can see it. And you can also see it in the gal in the green. So there's 3 joint actions happening in the glenohumeral joint, plus rotation, plus bearing all the body weight, 90% of the body weight if you add the feet. Needs to be stable. But we already talked about the design of this shoulder joint and how precarious it is. It's the most mobile 360 joint in the body. There's a lot of mobility going on here, and gravity is constantly doing this, pulling the humerus out of the glenoid fossa, pulling it, pulling it, pulling it. And the rotator cuff muscles are to hold it back in. Gravity's pulling down, rotator cuff, hold it back in, gravity, rotator cuff, gravity, rotator cuff, right? So that's happening before we even add a phasic action, which there are 3. One of them, which highly demands strength in the rotator cuff, lateral rotation. It's phasic action. Lateral rotation is being demanded on here while it's weight bearing and doing 2 other joint actions. And we already identified in this particular pose that what's being asked of this body, the most is shoulder stabilization. That's what's being asked for the most. It's being asked for by 4 muscles that typically don't get enough strength just given how they hang out in life, right? So as we're sitting here at our desk, sitting at a computer, writing, holding our cell phone, is our humerus neutral in the socket?
Probably not, because it's hanging.
And if I take my arm forward,
Right.
what's that, Gary?
No, I was just gonna say, if it's forward, then it's definitely not stable in the joint there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not stable in the joint in our typical posture,
Mhm.
and its stabilization is being challenged by gravity, even if our posture is perfect. And we're not weight bearing on our arms to add strength to those muscles. The best we can hope for is optimal posture and neutrality in those muscles, but we don't strengthen them with that. We only strengthen them when we contract them. They're not contracting typically in neutral. We're not walking on them. So now add poor posture, and now they're actually weakening instead of strengthening. And then we go to do something like this and put 90% of our body weight on one of them. How's that going to roll out? It'll be a little precarious. It's going to be a little precarious. So what we get to do as body workers, movement or manual, is find out what our people are up to when they're moving, right? When your client comes to you with shoulder pain and you're a manual practitioner, you ask them what physical activities they're up to in the world. And they say, oh, I do a hot power yoga class, or I work out with weights in the gym, or I flip tires over in the backyard, right? And you go through your mind and you're like, what the freak joint action is that? How are they doing that? And you just ask them to show you. I'm telling you, even as a manual practitioner, not in a gym setting or any movement setting that your client would be in, if you ask them to show you, for example, they say, oh, I do wild thing. We did a lot of wild thing in yoga yesterday. And you're like, I don't freaking know what wild thing is. And you say, great, show me what that is. And they're like, oh, it's the one where you do this. In your mind's eye already, you're like, wow, you're balancing on one arm? Yes, I was. Oh, wow. Okay, what are the joint actions that were required of that body in that area of the body that's normally doing this for posture habits? It wasn't the yoga pose, my friend. It was how we did the yoga pose. It wasn't flipping tires in the backyard. It's how we did them. If we don't have enough strength to flip the tires, we will recruit from other areas of the body. We'll recruit levator scapula and upper traps. We'll do protraction of the scapula and then gain pec strength. We'll do all kinds of crazy shit to flip that tire because that's what we want to do. We'll do crazy things to our spine to garden over the weekend. We're in gardening season right now. Gardening and golf. That's what happens right now. I'd be like, oh, I was golfing and I really want to golf. My back's hurting. It's not the golf, right? No. My golf swing's amazing. Oh, really? Well, then how come you're in pain? Because it's how you're doing the golf swing. I don't need to be a golfer to know that. I just got to ask them to put themselves in position like they were going to get ready to golf swing. And I get to look at their shoulders or their back or whatever they're complaining, pain-wise about. So I'm going to stop sharing here because I want to be able to expand the screen. Is there any other questions you have on this particular pose or what's happening in the joint action or what we get to focus on while you're still looking at it? Or do you guys all have a picture of it and I can stop sharing? You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you learn? What's the number one? Whether you're a movement or a manual practitioner, did I enroll you into believing that both manual and movement practitioners get to know the same thing about movement, even if you don't teach that type of movement? Did I enroll you in believing that? You see where we meet in the middle? Perfect. If I really believe as body workers, if we all knew that same information, our people would be moving pain-free. I really believe it because they'd either hear it from their movement provider, if you are the movement provider, or they'd hear it from their manual provider about how to go do the movement safer. And then we would be resolving a lot of this, right? Our clients don't know anatomy. Think about how we just had to learn a little bit more, even though we might have heard it a few times. We're like, oh, geez, I got to still remember that. It takes a while to learn anatomy. Our clients don't really know how they're designed to move. They're also going with how does it look, right? And so they're not even maybe focused on the area of the body that's being demanded to work well. So it's up to us to inform them. And as soon as we do, they move differently then because, knowledge is power. And when they know how they're designed, then they move differently. And then they can go do wild thing or gardening or golf or whatever it is they're up to. So I'm happy that I enrolled you in that. And what did you learn about looking at joint actions or looking at movement and how to distill down what to focus on? My intention was to share with you what to focus on when there's a whole lot going on and it's easy to squirrel. Let's digest it. What did you learn in the distillation process today?
I think it was breaking it down, like picking it apart, like asking all of it, like what do you see with the whole picture?
Okay, great. What else? Brenda, was your hand up?
Yes, figuring out which was primary doing the most work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And focusing there instead of on the whole.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Easy to see the whole.
And where is the neutral action? Where is the joint in neutral?
That right there, if I never saw you again, which would make me heart sad, would support you a lot. Yeah. What to focus on, how to decide what to focus on, and what's moving from neutral. And then knowing the joint actions and the muscles that go with it. Absolutely. So awesome job, you guys. And what did you learn about how to decide what to focus on? Take me one step deeper. We did it together. How did you learn how to do it on your own? You're looking at the body doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They're in a cartwheel, for goodness sake. And how do you know what to focus on? What did you learn?
What's
Definitely.
doing the most work?
What's doing the most work?
Mhm.
Right. And you guys can tell that? Do you know how to tell what's doing the most work? It's an honest question.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
can tell?
I think once that question was asked, it was like, oh yeah, okay.
Okay, awesome. What about you, Gary? What's doing the most work? Does that answer come to you readily? Oh, you're muted.
I can ask the question. I'm not sure I have the answer.
Okay, fair enough. Good. I can pour into you there around that. Rhonda,
Yeah.
how did you decide what's doing most of the work?
So one was the stabilizer in that particular pose, but also that we don't normally weight bear on our arms. So that would be a more difficult joint action than bending, hyperextending your back, or dorsiflexing your foot, or flexing your arm overhead. Those are all, or rotating your neck, lateral, rotating your neck. So all those things are more easily done than weight bearing on your shoulder and your wrist, the palm of your hand.
Yeah, great. That's great reasoning. So yeah, so just to highlight this one more level, Gary, in the interest of making sure you get it, we all get to know what neutral is. You get to know what neutral is. How is the body designed? When it's not doing anything, what's its alignment supposed to be? Remember I said at the very top of the hour, if we know how the body's designed, alignment, and we know how it's designed to move, function, as long as we're doing those two things, there's no pain. So how is the body designed to be aligned before it moves? What is that? That's the starting point. Roughly speaking, it's optimal standing, almost like the anatomy chart, except he's standing at 10 and 2 with his feet, which makes me crazy, but I know they do that just so you can see more muscles, so I'm going to stop being upset about that. So roughly speaking, it's the anatomy chart, but toes forward and thumbs forward with 4 balanced curves. That's neutral. That's neutral. Okay, roughly speaking. There's a couple other nuances, but that's 90% of it right there. From that position, you get to start identifying joint actions. From that position. So that's neutral. As soon as we're not in that position, what joint action's happening? Then what muscle's doing that job? And supposed to and doing it are not always the same thing. So what muscle's supposed to do that joint action? And is he? And that's how you start parsing out what to target if you're trying to fix something. So even as a massage therapist, if you're doing all the movement for someone, they're laying passively on your table, you still get to figure out what muscles they're working when they're doing the job. Because what you might be working on is the recruited muscle or the compensatory muscle, which means you solved it for today, but you didn't solve it the next time they go do that action. You're in Groundhog's Day with your client. So you still get to know what does the job. You can absolutely take care of the recruitment muscle, and you get to inform your client how that happened. And if your state doesn't allow you to do corrective exercise, no problem. They're in group activity with another provider. Partner with them. Partner with that provider and say, hey, this client that you and I share, I want you to double check that when they lift their leg in downward dog, that they're doing it from glute max. Just double check that for me, would you? Because this person keeps recruiting their back and it's causing them a lot of disc issues. And that provider is going to be like, wow, awesome. Thank you for letting me know. Let's make that happen so that this person can still come to my yoga class or my training class or whatever, and not eventually stop. And I know as the provider, movement provider that's been given this invitation that I'm contributing to them not being in chronic disc pain. They're absolutely. If the provider's not open to that, well, then you get to tell that to your client because they're not in safe care. And then you need to find somebody who can do movement for them if it's not provided and if it's not allowed in your state. Some states don't allow that. So just know where you're allowed to work, but you still get to know the anatomy so that you can get to the crux of the matter for your person. Right? You might be the manual provider who knows more about movement than the movement provider. It's the state of affairs, but that's just how it is these days until we all learn what we need to learn, right? And it's a learning curve, so no shade thrown. So know neutral, and then know what joint actions are happening outside of neutral, and who, meaning muscle, is supposed to do that job. And then check to make sure that they are. Does that support you, Gary? Does that feel like a good outline starting point?
Starting point.
Starting point. Now give yourself a little more credit than that. Give yourself a little more credit than that. You're doing great. You're doing great. And it takes a minute, you guys. Like I'm grateful that you're open enough to share, while we're all together on Tuesdays. Because we're all in the same boat. You hear it when you hear it. It lands when it lands, and it requires repetition. Doesn't mean you don't know anything. It means that you're a human with a brain. And that's just how information comes in, lands, and then you got to apply it. That would be the next step, Gary. And I almost want to put this step sooner. Like knowing it on paper is not the same as seeing it happen and calling it out. Like you've got to implement. Once you learn shoulder flexion, once you learn hyperextension of the spine, go make someone do it, in your world and bumble through the words if you have to be able to communicate with them how to do that thing you're asking them to do. And then what I do and what I recommend you guys do is when I see someone doing the movement, I hot seat myself. What joint action's happening? Who's doing the job? What joint action's happening? Who's doing the job? Who meaning muscle. When you can get to that place, you'll really feel like you're in it with the body and that you're confidently walking through all the information so that you can be present to what the body's asking you for when it's in trouble. Because ultimately what we just talked about is when it's in trouble, that's when everything we just talked about has gone awry. You got to know how it's designed and then be able to address it when it goes awry. And that's a few steps of process. So stay where you're at, stay in the step you're in, quiz yourself in real life, IRL, and then start laying down memory tracks for that so that you can address when somebody comes in and it's all awry and you're no longer in the habit of looking at all the things. You're just looking on the thing. Okay. All right. You guys got this. Thanks for being such great players today and hot seating and quiz questioning and jumping in. I really appreciate your participation. Was there value here for you today?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Get some good takeaways. Okay, awesome. That makes me happy. Great. Well, I'll see you guys next week. We'll wait for Rebecca to see the replay on her time zone difference and see if we get any other further questions. And of course, if you guys have anything you want me to cover on a Tuesday training, please feel free to drop me a note. I'm happy to cover a specific topic for you too. All right. Okay. Have a great week. Thanks for the awesome work you do in the world.